Hello everyone, my name is Zenitsu and I'm back with another Digimon deck profile video. So today I'm going to be taking a look at a budget deck in Special Booster 1.5, and this time it's going to be a green budget deck, and I know it says at 61 in the corner, but again, this number doesn't really reflect the price changes on anything on TCG Player, and that's like the main metric that a lot of people are using to price and evaluate their cards. And if you go onto TCG Player and basically buy this deck, it should reasonably cost you around $20 to $25, depending on where you look, or if you're looking at outside sources, it should cost you about that much as well. So this is definitely a really decent, really powerful deck that is also relatively cheap. So going over the deck, starting with the Digitama, I'm going to be running one copy of Argomon. So Argomon is a pretty solid Digitama because he has this nice inheritable ability where during your turn, when this Digimon becomes unsuspended during your unsuspend phase, you gain 1 memory. So a big part of like how green wants to play is you're just going to digivolve all the way up into your mega level as fast and efficiently as possible, and then you're going to be swinging with your mega, and then it is safe to assume that your mega is going to be living because he is going to be a lot bigger than what the opponent's Digimon are going to be. So unsuspending him basically is going to get you 1 memory every single turn, and that's just really, really powerful to be playing around with, just because it's a free extra memory every single turn, and that 1 memory could go quite a long way depending on how you're playing and what you're playing. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Minomon. So Minomon is the main Digitama of the deck, just because he has this really powerful inheritable ability of a when attacking ability. If you're attacking one of your opponent's Digimon, then this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for the turn. So this is just another really solid form of DP boosting, and we want to make sure that our Digimon are going to be stronger than the opponents. So Minomon is definitely a really solid way at DP boosting our Digimon to ensure that they can beat up the opponent's Digimon. But realistically, you could play around with the ratios on either of these. These are 2 of some of the best Digitamas that we have next to Tentomon. So if you want, you could also run Tentomon as well. It doesn't necessarily matter. It's just that these are some of the best Digitama that Green has, and they're all relatively decent and relatively cheap. Next, on to the rookies, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Goblimon. So Goblimon is just a very value-efficient vanilla card, and that's all we're looking to utilize him for, is the fact that he has this really low play cost, he has this really low evo cost, with some decent DP. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Tentomon. So this version of Tentomon is really, really good just because he's one of the better inheritable abilities we have for green, and he has the nice inheritable ability of a when attacking ability where we get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon with 3000 DP or less. So a lot of the rookies in the game just naturally have that 3000 DP or less, so the fact that we could use Tentomon when we digivolve him into higher levels to just start resting and controlling the opponent's lower end to ensure that they can't really try to do much with their lower end, and resting the opponent's Digimon also will help trigger some of our abilities and make some of our Digimon even stronger than they normally would be. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Agumon. So this Agumon is just a very fantastic Digimon for green to be playing with as a whole, just because he has this really generically decent inheritable ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP. Well, if the whole objective of green is to try to be as big and as powerful as possible, then this is definitely a really good card to have in your stack just because it makes your Digimon even larger, so it ensures that you could beat up on the opponent's Digimon and survive, and do a whole bunch of crazy things just because you're hitting for higher numbers. And then the last rookie of the deck is going to be 2 copies of Terrace. So Terrace is just an absolutely fantastic Digimon to be playing around with because he has this very powerful innate ability where during all turns, your opponent can't gain memory except by tamer effects. So this turns off the ability for them to gain memory with options and Digimon. And again, that's just really, really powerful because it's limiting what they can do. And this is both offensively good and defensively good, just because if you're trying to hit into their security and you're afraid of whatever is in their security going to be taking away your memory, or if the opponent is trying to manipulate your memory on your turn, then this is really, really powerful at turning that off, and it could even turn off certain lines of play to the opponent just because it's reducing the amount of memory that they could potentially be playing around with. So Terrace as a whole is just a very fantastic and very powerful Digimon for the deck. Next, on to the champions, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Woodmon. So Woodmon is basically just the blocker of the deck. There's really not much else to say about him. Next, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Kabuterimon. So Kabuterimon is a very fantastic Digimon for a whole bunch of different reasons. The first big reason is the fact that he has an Evo cost of 1, so he's very memory efficient on trying to get into your higher stages that much faster. And then on top of the fact that he has a low Evo cost, he even has a really nice inheritable ability where during your turn, this Digimon gets plus 1000 DP for every suspended Digimon the opponent has. So a big part of Green's gameplay is just again, trying to get the opponent to have their Digimon suspended, so that way we could swing into them and beat them up, so that way we could get them off the field and try to control the field that way. Or if we want to utilize this to just try to aggress onto the opponent's security, them having suspended Digimon will just make it whatever Digimon you're digivolving this up into that much stronger, and it'll make it that much easier to clear the opponent's security Digimon. So either way you choose on how to utilize the card, it's always going to be a very good and very powerful card. And then the last champion of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Gargamon. So Gargamon is in here for basically almost the exact same reasons as Kabuterimon, because they are very, very similar cards. The only difference is Gargamon has a lower play cost, and as such he has lower DP, but outside of that, their evolution cost and inheritables are basically the exact same, and that's really the only thing we're looking at trying to utilize the cards for, is the fact that they're just very memory efficient with some very decent abilities, and having the redundancy in abilities just makes your deck that much more consistent, just because you know you're going to be seeing these abilities more often than not. Next, on to the ultimates, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Lilymon. So Lilymon is just a really powerful ultimate to be playing around with just because of everything this card is doing. So the first big thing that the card is doing is she has a really low Evo cost compared to a lot of other Digimon in her level, so she's already being a very tempo efficient card to be playing around with, and that's kind of like the whole theme to how Green wants to be digivolving, is just very memory and tempo efficient. And then on top of which, she even has this really powerful inheritable ability where it's a when attacking ability, you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon without blocker. So suspending the opponent's Digimon is one huge aspect to what Green wants to be doing, so that way they could utilize the fact that the opponent has suspended Digimon in various different ways, whether it's trying to beat them up or utilize their suspended Digimon to give you some extra bonuses. It doesn't really matter. The fact that we just have a card to help suspend any Digimon is just very, very powerful as long as it doesn't have blocker. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Argomon. So Argomon is going to be limited as of April 1st, so that's why I'm only putting him at 1, just because he is going to be limited, and I think it's just better to prepare for when he is, rather than trying to play with him for a very short period of time and then have to remove copies of him. So I'm just preemptively doing that now. Argemon is still just a very fantastic and very powerful Digimon for the deck overall, just because of everything this card is doing still. So the first big thing that the card is doing is he has the Digizorption ability. So the Digizorption ability allows you to suspend one of your Digimon to reduce his evolution cost up by whatever the Digizorption number is, and in this case it's 3, so that means he basically can Digivolve for free just by suspending one of your Digimon. And again, that's just a huge tempo swing, because being able to just skip your level 5 to go right up into your level 6 because he costed 0 is just, again, really, really powerful on tempo, and that's like just what Green is trying to do, is just be very tempo efficient. And then on top of the fact that he is just one of the better tempo efficiency cards that we have, he also has this really powerful inheritable ability of when attacking, you get to play a level 3 green Digimon from your hand suspended for free. So just being able to spawn free Digimon is very, very powerful, even though they are coming in suspended. Depending on how you build the deck, that might not actually matter, because if the opponent can't beat them up and utilize the fact that they are suspended, then they are just going to unsuspend, and then we basically just got a free body on board to do whatever we want with it, whether we Digivolve it up into a new stack or utilize it for just being a good pressure card because we got it out for free. It doesn't necessarily matter, just because we have that extra body on board to have a lot more possible options to figure out what we want to do. Next, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Rapidmon. So Rapidmon is basically a Kabuterimon and Gargamon, but on a higher level. So it's doing almost the exact same things as both of those cards, just again on a higher level. So it has the same applications as those cards, where you're just using it for its really low evo cost for its level, and then it has a nice DP boosting ability, so that way you could try to make your Digimon as strong as it possibly can on your turn when you're attacking into either your opponent's Digimon or their security. And then the last ultimate of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Blossomon. So Blossomon is doing almost the exact same things as Argomon, where we're really trying to utilize this card for the Digizorption ability. Next, on to the Megas, I'm going to be running 4 copies of Mega Gargamon. So Mega Gargamon is definitely one of the best, if not the best, Mega we have on a budget, just because of everything this card is doing. So the first big thing that this card is doing is he has a really powerful when Digivolving effect, where you get to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon down, and then that Digimon doesn't unsuspend during the opponent's next unsuspend phase. So this is basically like a mini Puppetmon effect, where it's just stun locking one of the opponent's Digimon down, and again, the deck wants to play with the fact that they have suspended Digimon down for some additional bonuses, and we still want the opponent to have suspended Digimon, so that way we could try to beat up into them and control the board that way. So the fact that Mega Gargamon stun locks a Digimon and keeps it suspended is really, really powerful. And then on top of that, he even has another ability where during your turn, while the opponent has a suspended Digimon in play, then this Digimon gains Security Attack +1. So as long as the opponent has a suspended Digimon around, then he's just always going to hit for even harder security and put that much more pressure onto the opponent, which is really, really good. So if he's just, say, stacked up with Rapidmon, Gargamon, and Agumon, then this card off of 1 rested Digimon is already going to be hitting for 14, and then if they have any other rested Digimon, he's going to be hitting for even higher numbers. So he definitely can be a really powerful Digimon and a huge threat onto the opponent. And this is just one example on how you could utilize that Mega Gargamon to some very devastating degrees. If you have, let's just say, a Lilymon in its inheritable source, then you swing with Mega Gargamon, trigger Lilymon's ability to rest one of the opponent's Digimon down, and then he's always going to have Security Attack 1 based on that type of interaction. So all depending on how you utilize it, your stack it, you could really make Mega Gargamon a very hard hitting Digimon that can deal lots of damage onto the opponent and put lots of pressure onto them. And then the last Mega of the deck is going to be 4 copies of Bancho Stingmon. So Bancho Stingmon is one of the other really powerful Megas that we have to be playing around with, just because of everything this card is doing. So this card naturally has piercing, so that way if the opponent blocks or we attack into the opponent's Digimon and he survives, we're also going to be dealing security damage to him. The only unfortunate thing is the fact that he just naturally has 9,000 DP, which is why we're running so many DP boosts, so that way he can get it for even higher numbers. But he does have a really powerful ability to also help him mitigate this, where he has this when attacking ability. If you're attacking an opponent's Digimon that has 12,000 or more DP, then this Digimon gets plus 7,000 DP and Security Attack +2. So if we're attacking into one of their more powerful Digimon, then Bancho Stingmon is going to easily be able to beat over that Digimon and deal a whole bunch of extra security damage, putting that much more pressure onto the opponent. And the really insane thing about this ability is it's a when attacking ability, so even if you're just declaring you're attacking into their Digimon, if they block it, you're still going to be getting the buffs and the benefits. So Bancho Stingmon is just an absolutely insane Digimon to be playing around with, especially on a budget. Next, onto the option cards, I'm going to be running 1 copy of Hornbuster. So Hornbuster is definitely a really interesting tech choice just because of how efficient this card can be. So the first big thing about the card is it has a play cost of 1. So you're always going to have at least 1 memory going into your turn. So that means Hornbuster is basically always going to be online. And that's just, again, really powerful on how you could utilize the card. And then on top of that, what this card is doing is it allows one of your Digimon to gain 3,000 DP, so it could act as a little bit of a surprise where if the opponent wasn't anticipating that you'd be able to clear a specific Digimon, Hornbuster can just come out of nowhere and allow you to be able to clear that Digimon. But this card also is really, really good for its security effect, where you get to suspend one of your opponent's Digimon down and then add this card to the owner's hand. So this is just a really good and really powerful security effect, just because being able to suspend one of the opponent's Digimon is really, really powerful, especially for swinging with multiple Digimon. You reveal a Hornbuster, and then you get to basically take away one of their attacks by suspending one of their Digimon down, and that could be a really big deal. And then on top of which, this card being added to your hand allows you to basically play it whenever you feel like you're ready to. So between its main ability and its really powerful security ability, this is definitely a just really solid card to think about utilizing. But this card is just kind of like a flex option slot where you could really utilize any other option you feel like you want to. It doesn't necessarily have to be Hornbuster. I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, Hornbuster is just a really decent card. Next, I'm going to be running 2 copies of Terrace Cluster. So Terrace Cluster is another really powerful option card for green to be playing around with, because this is basically like their big removal card. So what this card is doing is it has the main ability to return one of the opponent's suspended Digimon to the bottom of the deck. This is a really powerful card to utilize with just Mega Gargamon, because we could like swing with Mega Gargamon after suspending one of their Digimon down, get the security attack +2, and then if we don't have another Digimon to beat it up, or we want to figure out ways to get around specific abilities like on delete, then Terrace Cluster gets around those, and it's just a really powerful card to utilize. And then it has the nice security ability of activating its main ability, so if the opponent is attacking into your security, more often than not their Digimon is going to be suspended, so that way you could try to clear their big threat with this card. And then the last option card of the deck is going to be 1 copy of Hidden Potential Discovered. So this is a card like Argemon that is going to be limited down to 1 as of April 1st, so I'm just preemptively doing it. And this is still just a very powerful option card that you definitely want to be running, because this option card is free, so it costs 0 to do, and it has this really powerful main ability where the next time one of your green Digimon digivolves this turn, you could suspend one of your Digimon to reduce the memory cost of that evolution by 5. This is basically like almost a pseudo Digisorption ability, except on an option card, and it allows you to get up into your Megas again that much more easier because you're reducing the evolution cost. And then this card has the really nice security ability of being added to your hand, so that way if it's checked in the security, it also will go to your hand, so that way you can decide when you want to utilize it. But this card is just an absolutely insane and very powerful card, and definitely one you should still always think about running. And then the last card of the deck is going to be the only tamer in the deck, which is going to be Ken Ichichoji. So Ken is basically just going to be acting as the memory fixing tamer of the deck, which memory fixing tamers aren't necessarily bad. You could think about utilizing Mimi for all of her application instead of Ken, but I just feel like for what the deck is trying to do, Ken is just a really solid tamer, just because his ability where during your turn, when one of your blue or green Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon by battle and survives, then you could suspend this tamer to gain 1 memory. So he's just acting as a little bit of extra memory gaining just for what the deck is trying to do, which is basically just rest the opponent's Digimon down and then beat them up. And again, he's just rewarding you for doing that by gaining you a memory. So this is just a really good tamer card for the deck to be playing with, just because he's fitting on theme. And then, as I mentioned before, green just has a lot of really powerful tools that they have access to on a budget. Actually, looking at it, the majority of green's cards are budget-friendly cards, and there's not really that many super expensive cards that you really feel like you need to invest into. But if you do, then all the more power to you. But like I said, green just has so many really powerful budget tools to work with that it really definitely makes green one of the stronger colors to play on a budget. So you could think about running Palmon, because Palmon is pretty decent at trying to fix your hand, where she's just checking the top 3, so that way you could try to find a level 4 Digimon, and then after you utilize her on-play ability, she makes great Digisorption fodder. Then you could also think about running Werman for basically almost the exact same reasons as Palmon, except Werman can search for a level 4 or level 5, and his abilities on delete, so he is even better Digisorption fodder, so that way if the opponent really wants to try to deal with him, then you're going to be gaining the benefit, and you could just sit on this card forever if you don't really feel like you need to utilize his ability. And then if you do want to try to utilize his ability, then you could just easily swing into the opponent's security with him. So Werman is probably just a better tech option for trying to fix your hand than Palmon. You could also think about utilizing Vegemon as just another very powerful value vanilla card, just because he has a low play cost, high DP, and low evo cost, so that all goes into what makes this card actually pretty decent to run. You could also think about utilizing Stingmon. So Stingmon is just another one of those champions that has a very low evo cost with a pretty decent ability, and his ability is basically almost the exact same as Okumon's, where it's a during your turn, once per turn, when this Digimon deletes an opponent's Digimon and survives the battle, then you gain 1 memory. So if the whole objective is just trying to beat up the opponent's Digimon to control them that way anyway, then Stingmon is going to be gaining you memory for doing so. And as I mentioned before with Stingmon, you could also think about running Okumon for basically the same type of effect, except on a higher stage. And Okumon is not once per turn. For some alternate megas, you could think about utilizing Taitamon just for all of the same reasons as Vegemon and just basically any value vanilla card, just because his stat line and efficiency is just really, really high. And then if you don't feel like you want to run Bancho Stingmon, Grand Kawagamon is basically doing almost the exact same thing. He just has a naturally higher DP and a higher evo cost, but he does have the piercing ability and he does boost his own DP. It's just not as much as Bancho Stingmon's, but this has less restrictions and less requirements for basically almost the exact same price. Then you could think about changing up the deck to accommodate Argemon, because Argemon, like Mega Gargamon, is basically just trying to hit for a whole bunch of security. It's just Mega Gargamon is a little bit more consistent, but Argemon definitely has the potential to hit for a lot more because he's playing more into the Digisorption ability. So you could run some more Digisorption cards to keep a lot of your cards at rest, or play a little bit more aggressive or with some jamming, so that way you could try to swing into the opponent's security, have yours live, and then Argemon is going to be dealing even more damage. Then you could run something like Giga Blaster. So Giga Blaster is another really powerful option card on a budget, just because this is basically a discount Flower Cannon, but the main objective of playing Giga Blaster and stuff like it is to try to rest the opponent's Digimon down, so that way you could either beat them up with whatever Digimon you have on the field, or you could utilize the fact that they're rested for some of your various other abilities, and this is just another fantastic card at resting your opponent's Digimon down, because it also has the added ability to potentially rest 2 of the opponent's Digimon down as long as they have 5,000 DP or less. And then it has the nice security ability of activating its main effect, so even though this just isn't as good or efficient as Flower Cannon, it's still a very powerful card to be playing around with. And then, like I said before, you could think about utilizing Mimi as an alternate tamer, just because she's doing some very similar things like what Ken is doing, where her main objective is to try to fix your memory, so that way if you're less than 3 memory, then they'll just hard set you to 3. But Mimi's application on what her ability is versus Ken's definitely is different and varied depending on how you want to build the deck. Mimi might be better just because she allows you to turbo your raising area, so that way you could get out more of your eggs faster, so that way you could potentially draw more cards and have more powerful Digimon coming out faster and pressure them through that, versus Ken, where he's just gaining you some passive memory by you just deleting the opponent's Digimon through battle and yours are surviving. So depending on what you want to utilize in your deck, they're both really good tamers to think about. But like I said, green is definitely a really powerful deck that you could build on a budget, and it has just so many good budget tools to be working around with. And the main objective of what like a good budget green deck is doing is that basically you're going to be running 2 main cards. One card is going to act as the piercer to try to beat up the opponent's Digimon, and then the other card is going to try to attack into their security, so that way you could try to formulate this really powerful lock strategy where one Digimon is going to attack into their security and then rest the opponent's Digimon down, so that way the other one can beat them up, and that's kind of like how you start to control the board while dealing damage at the same time. So it's just a very powerful strategy, and it can be utilized with a whole bunch of different cards, and this is just kind of like what makes green really, really powerful. On top of a lot of the rest effects, DP boosts, and tempo efficiency, it's just a really powerful color to be playing with on a budget. So that's all I really have for this video. As always, I'll have the deck list down in the description below. I also will have my TCG Player affiliate link down in the description below. So if you want to buy your cards off of TCG Player, using that link will help support me in the channel. And as always, feel free to tell me your thoughts down in the comment section below. And don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content. And I'll see you in the next video.